Hello, everybody, and welcome on in to Vandy on SI. I'm Dylan Tovitz here with Joey Dwyer. Another exciting week at practice. We're here today right outside the indoor facility. Obviously, things are going pretty well in Commodore land these days. I mean, we've seen it throughout practice, throughout this week, and obviously you can kind of see that translate on the field. Coming home this week to face Georgia State, Joey, what are your kind of expectations for the game on Saturday? And have you seen anything in practice? Where are your thoughts at?
Yeah, I mean, Dylan, we both know dang well we haven't seen anything in practice this week. We get the blandest segments of practice throughout the year, but I think it's a big game for Vanderbilt in that I think it can demonstrate its maturity relative to its maturity at this time last year, where Clark Lee talked about how guys weren't showing up where they were supposed to be, or at least they weren't showing up on time to where they were supposed to be, or jacking around in practice, things along those lines. That's not really been the case this year from what we've understood. Brandon Fournette on Tuesday talked about how guys are finally doing those things. They're showing up where they need to be. They're approaching this game with the proper intensity, and I think Vanderbilt does that. It wins by 2+ touchdowns, but it's got to do that first, and I think Saturday is really going to be a byproduct of what it's done all week, and I think it's far more talented than this Georgia State team. But Dylan, I think we're going to really see the level of preparation that they had going into this game, and I think it's interesting. Like, you don't want to put too much into last year, but it almost feels like a real easy comparison to where last year you saw all the negative signs during the week come back to bite them. This week, I don't know that that's going to be the case. I don't expect that to be the case, but we'll test it out on Saturday.
Yeah, it stood out to me. Clark Lee I think Clark Lee's always had a pretty good hold in the locker room as a leader, as we talk over another big helicopters spot these days. But it's really stood out to me.
This is the spot on campus for the helicopters to come by, evidently.
That's good to know. It's really stood out to me how much of a leader Clark Lee has developed into, and you can kind of see it if you go back and watch the sights and sounds video from the South Carolina week that Vanderbilt posted, or whatever it's called. You can kind of see how much this team is bought in, and I think that helps with the preparation. A lot of what he says is coach speak, with we're obviously taking it one game at a time. We're thinking about Georgia State. We're not thinking about Bama and LSU. But I actually think, I'm actually believing it more this time than I think we ever have. And I think you can see that when Clark kind of lets his guard down in the videos when he's talking to the team, and just how the team has responded. I truly do think that they're kind of going into this game with that mindset that, this is the only game that matters. And I think maybe last year they weren't, and they were, I believe, 2-0 at the time last year, and maybe thinking ahead. And as Georgia State is all right, this is a sure win. I don't think that's the case this year, which is obviously the mentality you want to have. I will say Georgia State is a better team than Charleston Southern, so this isn't a complete walkover, and Vanderbilt still has to play a good game for it to go how they want it to go. I think setting the tone early is a big key. You can kind of, if you can do what you did against Charleston Southern, which is pretty much assert the fact that there's nothing they can do on defense to kind of stop your offense from scoring from the very beginning, then this game could be over by the middle of the first quarter. But if they get off to a little bit of a shaky start and this becomes a game, you never know how it could go. So I definitely think starting out strong is key. Clark mentioned today that Issa Wataha is going to be probably questionable. He said they're going to take it up to game time with him. I wouldn't be surprised if they list him as doubtful or ultimately hold him out, just trying to get him right. Clark has said it's not a surgical thing. They're just really trying to prevent the wear and tear of the season. So if that's the case, I think it makes sense maybe to hold him out a little more. But besides that, injury-wise, they're pretty healthy. Chase Gillespie is going to be out for the game. But besides that, running back Chase Gillespie. Besides that, they're pretty healthy. But a little bit more, what do you think, keys for the game, Georgia State?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote it in the actual keys of the game story, which I think comes tomorrow. They just got to want to win badly. I think that's almost what it boils down to for me at this point. We've seen Georgia State this year, and obviously they're capable of coming in here and doing some things. They lost 63-7 to Ole Miss, lost pretty significantly to Memphis. Not a world beater team, and they've got Ted Hurst, who Clark Lee said might be the best receiver they faced to this point. I don't know that I disagree with him there. He's big, he's fast, and physical. He can go up and get it. Obviously torched Vanderbilt last year, 127 yards, had his best game of the year. Saturday against Murray State, so Vanderbilt's going to have to be on it there with him and kind of slow him down. But Dylan, I think it ultimately boils down to their level of intensity, their level of focus. And I mean, you listen to Brandon Fontenette and Martel Height talk on Tuesday, and Martel Height is the program spokesperson here. It's almost like you're listening to Clark Lee talk when you listen to Martel Height, which I'm sure is great. I'm sure it's great for Clark Lee. Brandon Fontenette will let his guard down a little bit more, and I mean, he told us they're using last year as motivation, and I think that really echoes the sentiment of the locker room more so than what Height said about mission is winning, and it's just the same thing as a normal game. I don't think it's a normal game for them, and honestly don't know that it should be. I think they need to internalize the result from last year and move forward with that in mind. And based off what Fontenette said, I think that they actually are, even if Clark and Martel maybe won't tell you exactly that.
Yeah, the intensity's certainly there. I think you can tell that. Clark said it's been an intense week of practice, which he does say most weeks, but he'll also be honest with you, and he's like, I don't think our focus is where it should be. But yeah, I think you mentioned Ted Hurst. I'd say that's a pretty important key to the game. I think we might see, obviously a lot of blitzing from Steve Gregory the last 2 weeks, which has helped, especially in the second half last week. Clark mentioned today when talking about Gregory that he's really kind of expanded the play sheet a lot more than himself, Clark Lee, did last year as play caller, which you're kind of seeing on these like zone blitzes, bringing safeties, bringing corners, dropping defensive linemen, what they did on the Zaylen Wood pick that just like kind of confused Lenore Sellers. Mm-hmm. So I think we might see some of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of stick in some conservative man zone coverage, leave your safeties over the top for Ted Hurst, and I think that might be the path they go on defense. I liked what I saw from Bryce Cowan last week after Langston Patterson was ejected. I think there's a path to get him more on the playing field. It's obviously hard with Langston and Brian Longwell and Nick Rinaldi, but we saw Cowan line up on the edge a couple times, and he was kind of making plays all over. Obviously delivered the big blow on that forced fumble in, I believe, third or fourth quarter. So I think the defense is kind of really, we talked about the depth of the defense a lot. You're starting to see that come to play. The cornerbacks as well. Martel Height's been playing a lot more on offense, and you kind of haven't even noticed it on defense, which is a good thing. We saw, obviously, Colby Taylor's been playing pretty much every snap, but other guys have gotten in, Jordan Matthews, Mark Davis, even Marlon Jones. These are guys that are starting to play more. Fontenette in the slot, obviously. So I think we're starting to see that, and it's kind of shaping, turning into a defensive identity. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this defense has not really gotten enough credit for what they've done to this point in a lot of ways. You look at the second halves where basically shut everybody down doing it outside of Charleston Southern. It's crazy Charleston Southern has the most second half production, and it's all off Gabe Giardina saying we're not getting shut out. And
that's true.
Pulling the petty move there, kicking the field goal, although he seems like a great guy. But yeah, I mean, I think they've really found an identity getting to the quarterback and blitzing, and I think they know that they don't have the pass rushers to win with 3 down or whatever, but I think they've really embraced that identity, and I think their cornerback play has been good enough. I think Colby Taylor's had a really solid start. Martel Height hadn't played a whole lot of snaps relative to what I thought he would play. 2 out of the 3 games he's played more offensive snaps, but nothing notable there necessarily. And obviously CJ Hurd might be the best player on the defense to this point, which we've kind of talked about previously. But yeah, I think you're right. They have formed an identity there. I think Steve Gregory, Clark kind of mentioned early in the year, maybe not as, or maybe a little more aggressive than him. Steve pushed back on it a little bit. Yeah. I think Steve has been more aggressive, or at least has put some more aggressive stuff into this point, and I think that's a key here, and I think they've both done a really nice job. Clark and Steve kind of putting stuff in and calling the defense in a way that I think leads to leveraging their personnel a little bit better than they have in the past. And also the cornerback play I think is a big deal too, because that allows you to leverage your other personnel.
Right, and that was what we were worried about the most going into the season, was can that cornerback room hold up behind Martel Height, and I think so far they've exceeded all expectations in that department for sure.
For sure. And Dylan, I want to know one more thing before we get out of here. Jalen Stone was named Man of the Month today. I don't know if you could hear it from the auxiliary room. Clark Lee interviewed Jalen Stone on the field after practice about his awesome. Man of the Month, about his selection, and Clark's a natural. He I don't know that he's as good as Dylan Tovitz in the interview room.
It's a high bar.
But I think that's something people are supposed to say about you, not about yourself. But Clark I will say Clark walked off. I gave him crap about his interview. He goes, I'm a natural. So he's pulling the same strings you're pulling here, but shout out to Clark Lee and Clark Lee's interview ability of
Maybe
doing
he has
stuff.
a journalistic future, Clark Lee. You never know.
Something has gone terribly wrong if Clark Lee has
Something would have to go
Yeah,
terribly
I mean, we're always hiring, but something would have to go terribly wrong.
Clark, if you're watching this, Vandy on SI.
It's the grittiest Vanderbilt outlet at this point.
If you haven't heard.
If you haven't heard, it's that 2 7-hour drives back-to-back weekends. That's grit, Dylan.
That's great. All right, yeah, so we're going to probably wrap up now. Obviously, big game this weekend. We will be there covering it per usual. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.